Friends and subscribers, this is China News for August 2014. What's going on in the Middle Kingdom this month back in China? And here I see that gold loses its luster as demand drops. This is something that hasn't happened in quite a long time in China, as the yellow metal drops to its lowest performance since 2013. As we can see in this figure here, gold demand quarter by quarter, that it has dropped significantly here in the middle of this year. And we're not worried really, because there's always lulls in gold demand as summer goes through August, and then into fall it picks up again. And as we enter into the Chinese New Year come winter, it always picks up, and we have other markets like India that also nudges gold back up. So it's not really a terrible surprise, but it's also, a good time to buy gold because the price has become more attractive. And as I'll show you in some later videos, there are deals to be had, and now's the time as demand drops to get in and see if you can find some great deals on gold. What's the #1 junk food consuming nation in the world? If you said United States, you are wrong. It is now China. And noodles have to be the most popular type of junk food consumed. Huge stats behind the number of noodles consumed. 54.6 billion is the value of the Chinese instant noodle market. 120 million packets in China are eaten every day. A 6% rise in that consumption is calculated, and in 2018 they expect to have this thing grow to its absolute height. 44 billion packets of instant noodles are consumed in China every year, making them by far the world's largest consumer of instant noodles. 152, the number of times the noodles consumed in China in one day could circle the equator end on end. And with all those noodles comes with plenty of sodium, MSG, and other types of additives that are making Chinese become obese. Okay, there are 60 million obese Chinese adults and many more per capita in the children. This is a growing trend in China. As fast food becomes more and more popular, you see Chinese youth having trouble keeping off the weight. And with parents having a busy schedule and everybody moving into the urban areas, China is getting fat. 1,000 cult members arrested, and it has to do with religion. More religious persecution in China, as 1,000 suspected members of a cult of God party here in China got arrested, and they're referencing an event in Shandong province where in the McDonald's about a month ago a woman got killed, apparently refusing to give up her phone number and to be part of the group. So religious persecution continues. More people arrested and rounded up, and this has been loosely related to what's going on in Xinjiang, where there's more religious profiling and persecution of another sort, not Christian, but in fact Muslim. Okay, the 5 cult members that are going to stand trial for possible execution are there in the photo right there. And currently China lists 5 cult members that are of significant threat to China, that they say, one of them being the Falun Gong, which I've told you about many times before. So anything to do with religion and anything that has some kind of significant event that they call terrorism will be cracked down on heavily. And it's a warning to all Christians in China and Muslims alike that it doesn't really matter what the discipline is. Beijing will allow no threats to its power and sovereignty. Okay, more activity on internet crackdown. These 2 bloggers, Lu Mei and Yang Xiaoyu, were indicted for deleting posts and spreading rumors. They had been very entrepreneurial in starting their own company, that they would go online and their employees would delete posts that were undesirable by companies and perhaps individuals, government officials. And they would do this and then make alternative posts to suit the needs of the client. And they were arrested because it's illegal not only to post rumors, but apparently it's illegal to delete rumors, which is really counterproductive, I would think. I would think that the Chinese government would want to hire bloggers to delete rumors, false rumors, although they don't want them to post any alternative views. It's still, instead of arresting them, maybe it could have been an opportunity where this small firm could have
Big
done
news coming out of
some real.
Beijing as the government ends all Apple purchases for government employees and government-related activities. Added to the list is Dell Computer, HP, and other Western tech companies. However, Lenovo, which is the PC market of IBM that was bought out by the Chinese, is not on that list because it is owned now by a Chinese company. So what does this mean? Well, this is quite significant because up until now, about a year and a half ago, the government issued statements that they do not want any more government purchases of German cars. And then after that, a little over a month ago, the government had issued a statement saying that no longer would they be buying or using Windows OS Microsoft software, and that is desktop and server. This seems quite absurd to me, as most of the computers in China use a Windows OS platform, and many of the software applications and the application companies that are in China that are popular are writing code for the Windows OS platform. So how are they going to discontinue using the Windows operating system unless they have a copy of the Windows operating system that they're going to put out there and slap their Chinese label on it, which doesn't surprise me a bit. But you can see where the hypocrisy lies, as the protectionism is very thick in China and it's getting worse and worse. We know for a fact that many of the government officials and their families have Apple products, iPhones and iPads, personally at their homes, and they use them. So for the government to come out and say ending Apple purchases when China is the manufacturing hubs for Apple products to be exported is protectionism gone wrong, and it will backfire on them. How much further is this going to go? It's tough to say, but the ridiculousness coming out of Beijing continues on such topics as this. It's like saying the U.S. government come out and saying that none of their officials will be wearing Armani suits because it's Italian. That kind of absurdity is the thinking of the Chinese Chi-Coms. Their minds are dead set on Chinese only, yet they open their arms to the world's other countries and say we want to have free trade and brotherhood. Hypocrisy 101. In the world of the bizarre and slightly humorous, down in Shenzhen, police detained a thief that had a pair of vases that he discarded as being worthless, but in fact they are worth 3 million yuan, $491,000 equivalent. But the thief did take 21,000 in RMB cash, a jade worth 7,000 RMB, and a DVD player and stereo system worth more than 3,000 RMB. He kept those. He tried to throw these out in a bunch of potted plants, and when the police finally arrested him and tracked him, he had no idea that the vases were so important and worth so much. This just goes to show you what the real value of things are. He keeps the high-tech trinkets thinking that they're valuable when in fact they're just depreciating rubbish, and he ignores the real true value of the vases. And I'm sure that if there were some old coins, he probably would have discarded those too. So with inflation raging, all value of real things is going up, and meanwhile everything else is just rubbish. So word to the wise, if you're going to be a successful thief, be an antiques thief and a gold and silver expert, and maybe you'll come out on top. Huge layoffs for IT professionals in China. Part of the reason that is happening is because not only are some of these multinational companies cutting back on their global risk profile, but also Chinese workers are demanding more pay and more benefits. And this is a growing concern of tech companies throughout China, that they're not able to get the cheap labor that they had calculated originally, as inflation is much higher in China than it is in other parts of the world, and people are now starting to demand benefits and pay
on a level more appealing to highly educated professionals. So, where does this all lead to? Well, I think that it leads to a few different places. One of them is social unrest. Another is perhaps that these IT companies, these high-tech firms, are going to look elsewhere in Asia to get the budget, highly trained professionals that they need. And Microsoft is one of the companies that has the biggest budget cut, and it could cut at least 4,000 more jobs in China, and more than 500 employees at Microsoft headset development site in Beijing had signed a request last week calling for direct talks with company executives and layoff arrangements. So these negotiations are going on as I think more and more Chinese are considering the possibility of forming some kinds of trade unions. And that is bad news for Beijing because unions, labor unions, are pretty much taboo here. And we'll see this as being a big story going forward as more and more workers decide that they're not too satisfied with the status quo when it comes to labor laws, wages, and employment benefits compensation. Cartoon of the month shows Uncle Sam in waters outside of its territory trying to police the various nations on which part of Asian waters belongs to which nation. Now there are many, many maps out there, and there's many, many disputes about these waters in the South China Sea and East China Sea, and also in other areas too. And there are many countries involved in this. And Uncle Sam, United States, is just seen as being a carpetbagger in the whole situation. But the Asian pivot lives on despite some recent battles, tit for tat, with Navy and Air Force. And we'll definitely see a lot more heated disputes in these waters as Chinese fishing vessels, these domestic fishing vessels, are being militarized and sent into waters outside of China control. In Fujian province, 2 men are sentenced for a combined 23 years in prison for the robbery and rape of a hermaphrodite. Now, this is kind of the story that is bizarre and can only come out of China, but there are many, many like this. Not really sure why the men took advantage of this person who has had a sex change or is bigender, but these kind of things happen more often here than you would imagine. And apparently the courts have some kind of ruling on this type of behavior in the books, which is a bit surprising too, because it's not very common to see any transgender people walking around China, and the fact that they have laws on the books about this is really quite surprising. More internet crackdowns, new rules for social media, as one of the internet giants, WeChat, that is owned by Tencent, is requiring real name verification for its new users. I do believe that old users can be grandfathered in, but we're coming to the days here rapidly, in Asia at least, where you'll have real name verification if you want to get an account with some of these popular internet portals and applications, which means you'll have to have a Chinese ID, possibly allow a foreign ID, but any ambiguity, any way that you can post without having your information displayed is quickly becoming a thing of the past. And I think it's bad for the internet because it doesn't allow us to have conversations and communications over the internet and not have to risk being ridiculed or tracked or punished by a controlling force outside of the realm of the conversation. So privacy issues abound, and of course Jiangxi province, a homemade helicopter, car helicopter, on sale for 100,000 yuan at 16,232 US dollars. Any buyers will have to come to Jiangxi province and talks to Mr. Jiang Chang. Did China just announce a new stimulus package? Well, yes, it did. Technically, the 12 billion yuan package has been announced to stimulate the agricultural sector. It's about $3.26 billion equivalent, and this liquidity is going to go into the lending institutions to help to push up the agricultural sector, which has been down as of recent. Also, manufacturing has been down over the past 3 months, and they're trying to boost these numbers as they're, of course, trying to reach their target by the end of the year of having a GDP growth exactly where the government says that it should be. So these little stimulus packages have been happening for a long time here in China. This is no big news, as they've had their QE 1, 2, 3, and so on, but they've also had these little tiny QE stimulus packages that are meant to prop up markets that have underperformed or been fraudulent. Of course, we know right now that the housing sector is in a tailspin, and in cities like Shanghai, luxury apartments are empty, and they're trying to sell these things at discount, and they've been overbuilt, and it's a real mess. But you'll see more stimulus packages on the way, and it can only mean one thing: more inflation in China. More inflation in China, this huge economy, means more inflation abroad as the globe becomes more and more interconnected with banking and trade. So not good news. More money being printed, as you can imagine, and soon coming to a nation near you, more stimulus packages. More on the social news front, as China's growth dips, will suicides rise? Yes, they already are. The woman in this picture was saved and rescued from waterways near her home when she tried to commit suicide because she couldn't afford to buy her son ice cream. And this story is all too common throughout rural China, as with the economy cooling off and people becoming more and more disenfranchised, they're not able to afford some of the things in life that the children of these parents have in the bigger cities. And with no real social safety net and no solution coming from Beijing as to how to employ, house, and feed so many people, the suicide rate in rural areas is quite high. Of course, they're never reported as such, but the social impact is very hard on the population. And I'll be trying to do some videos later in the year in some rural areas in China and try to show you exactly what life is like in these provinces that are basically forgotten by the central government. And from the opinion pages of the New York Times, How China Can Defeat America, the author Yan discusses how China can become more humane at home and increase relationships abroad and give financial aid to foreign governments to use soft power to gain that hedge against Western influence. Now, this is a mighty tall task when you consider that there are so many social problems in China, and Asia itself is not even controlled by China yet with influence, that how they can challenge a worldwide consortium of banking and military powers seems almost insurmountable. But what he's arguing here is that China can do so by giving the alternative to what the U.S. is doing with military force and being more humane and offering a softer side to the Western aggression. And that is the only way that he perceives that China can gain the influence abroad to make it the #1 world power and most influential. Only time will tell, but like I've always said, it's, be careful what you wish for, because to have an empire is not something that many people would want to be in charge of, because managing an empire can be a complete and total nightmare. Once you get the thing that you want, you only then realize that the cost is much greater than what you had anticipated. So read this article if you want to get a little more insight on how China views their role, increasing role abroad, and how they can defeat what's the so-called tyranny of Western imperialism.